Smooth muscle tissue can be found in the muscular layers of the gut tube, but also for example in blood vessels. It is often arranged in layers with distinct fiber directions. In this video we will be looking at the actual layout and orientation of smooth muscle tissue and the way it facilitates function. Smooth muscle fibers have a spindle-like shape and a high elasticity. They are arranged in so-called longitudinal and circular layers in the walls of organs and vessels. Through organized waves of contraction and relaxation, you get mixing and propulsion of the contents, called peristalsis. Of course, peristalsis is important for proper function of the gut, but let's look at the location where you might be surprised to find peristalsis. Let's look at this image, which shows a transverse section of a ureter, a tube which propels the urine from the kidneys to the urinary bladder. The ureter first has two distinct smooth muscle layers, and in the last third segment, towards the bladders, 3. The bladder itself also has 3 layers. When we zoom in on this transverse section and look at the smooth muscle fibers, we can see an inner layer with a more chunky appearance. Groups of fibers appear to run in the length, longitudinal, of the ureter. The second layer looks more stringy. Fibers seem to run more circularly around the lumen. A third layer seems to run longitudinally again, and indicates that this part of the ureter runs very close to the bladder. Actually, all over your body, in all tubes and organs, smooth muscle fibers are running together in multiple spirals, like the twist of a screw. And just like in different screws, the angle of the twist varies. An acute or long twist presents itself as a longitudinal chunky layer in a transverse section. An obtuse or short twist would be seen as a more circular, stringy layer. Well, when we look at this drawing, you can imagine that longitudinal sectioning of the tissue would actually show an opposite presentation. The acute or chunky layer would look more stringy and the other way around. The actual configuration of each muscle layer, however, either acute or obtuse, has not changed, of course. Both layer configurations, each with their own contraction pattern, are necessary for peristalsis. Otherwise you would not get a unidirectional flow, good mixing in the stomach, or emptying of the bladder, to name a few things. So don't get hung up on the terms longitudinal and circular when dealing with smooth muscle layers. Know from theory which smooth muscle layer follows an acute pattern or an obtuse pattern in the organ you are examining. Remember to check the orientation and don't get fooled if we present you with a sneaky longitudinal section of some tissue instead of the more common transverse slides.